Evening all, welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. This is on the Play Chess server, chess-based Play Chess server. I'm also streaming to YouTube. Okay, so we're going to have a look at some great games from the 1940s. Two great games from the 1940s. So this is from Chess Games Gone Best of the Best, as voted kind of virtually by members of that site, which specialises in chess games, hence the name. So Best of the Best 1940. They're both kind of relentless, actually. I would like to say in the introduction to both games tonight, they're absolutely relentless to the extreme. If there was an adjective for these two chess games, I think I would definitely use both. Definitely use this adjective in both games. So this first game, Tartakower against Euwe. So Tartakower is of course one of the leading hypermodernists of the time, and also he's created a number of very witty quotations. So he's a man of great wit and humour, and I think he was universally liked by many players as well. Max Euwe is of course one of our world chess champions, and the Netherlands has never been the same since. In their respect for the culture of chess, having their own world champion is always helpful. So e4 from Tartakower. Let's put on Livebook and add a Kibitzer. And we have e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, and the giuoco piano is played. So this is when black plays bishop c5. It becomes giuoco piano territory. And in fact, there's a little joke on Chess Games Com for the witty thing for this game. Talking of wit, don't shoot the piano player. Okay, don't shoot the piano player. But we're going to see this game, as I say, total relentlessness from a certain point. c3 seems like a very logical move. To try and construct a centre rapidly. Bishop drops back in advance of d4, which gives black an option now, which is used, which is actually queen e7. And okay, white's encouraged to sort of close the centre, but he doesn't do that. That might be a reasonable move actually, but you get the idea that perhaps after knight b8, this is looking like potentially a King's Engine style position, which even though engines might think it's okay for white, black's got not hit a5. Black's got it's nice sometimes to have the center closed. So the center wasn't closed with d5. It might be tempting to do that, but it wasn't. So white castled d6, h3, knight f6, rook e1. Black castles now knight a3, which means actually the knight can centralize later, like this if needed. Knight d8, bishop drops back, knight e8, and actually the knight goes via c4. So also en route, it might be to the central square e3, but potentially it can take the bishop off. Black reinforced things here with the move f6. And in fact, the accidental variation I just showed you earlier, where the bishop's lost, is actually maybe echoes here. White maybe is trying to win that bishop now with a5. This is a serious concern to win this bishop. And in fact, white stands a bit better. Yeah, black's having to do something about this. If a6, then taking. I think this is even more painful than the game. This is nice for white. This position. This is vulnerable. Diagonal's vulnerable, but actually c6 might be the lesser evil in the position. It's still taken off, and that pawn is indeed vulnerable, and in fact taken off. But we see some potential fury now emerging in the black position. Yeah, believe it or not. Black plays a very, very aggressive move here. G5, yeah. is the queen kind of misplaced? You know, it's away from the king, quite far away from the king. Intuitively, when pieces are away from the king, and this queen is like better positioned centrally to sort of help in any sort of attack, there's a little bit of danger creeping in potentially. We see the move bishop c4, and now h6, h4, king h7, as though black might be preparing to use this g file. I mean, it looks pretty possible to use it potentially. At the moment, the bishop's eyeing down that whole diagonal. hg, hg, d takes, trying to hold on to g5 firmly. Bishop e3. Yeah, maybe white had actually a better plan here, it seems. I mean, it seems as though perhaps this tension could have been capped in some sort of advantageous way. By resolving the tension, I think some of black's problems have also been resolved. Let's have a look. Bishop h3, rook h8. It looks as though there's attacking fury on the way. There's this rook on the h file. The queen, as I say from before, is seemingly potentially misplaced if king safety becomes an issue. g3, king g6, and we see that this central queen is it's possible that this is now a major threat. And where is this queen? It's just on b6. Having munched that pawn, this queen is like stuck there, and there's this big threat of queen h7 that needs to be addressed. Perhaps one of the better defensive moves is to play bishop f1 here. You know, maybe the and bishop g2 if needed. You know, bishop f1. This wasn't played. If here we have bishop g2, and this should be okay for white. But in the game, we have king g2, and as mentioned, we're going to get now attacking fury. Is the only way I can describe this. And I played through this game maybe a few times over the last few years. Actually, it's fascinating to me because Max Euwe, he wasn't as eccentric as other world chess champions. You know, he was a family guy, a normal person, and so couldn't possibly be a super strong world champion, right? Or couldn't possibly play in a really deadly aggressive manner, because we associate that with world champions that are less stable, right? But let's have a look what happens here from the mild-mannered Max Euwe, family guy. So black to play. I wonder if you can guess this next move. Black to play here. Any ideas? Okay, I mean the fury really starts now. Give yourself 200 points if you did see this possibility now. Okay. Knight comes to f4. Knight f4 check. It limits white's options. The king can't move because then it's really bad. You know, queen d7 coming into h3. This is a killer. You know. In fact, rook h1 check is the immediate threat then, and then queen h3 and queen g2. If bishop f1, this is a killer. Knight h3 check. Queen g4. Big threats. This can't be. You know, the king can't just move. That has to be taken. Now, best might have been to take with the bishop, actually. This might have been the best way to take, apparently. But in this game, the pawn takes. This is a very different story now, the pawn taking. The pawn taking, yeah, there's a nice g-file there. We have check. King comes to g3. E takes f4 check. White is forced to give back a piece, but black doesn't just take on f4. If he takes if black took on f4 here, this is actually okay for white. The king isn't getting mated on f4 or anything. The queen is covering at least c7 from this check. It's difficult. The knight's covering e5. There's nothing really that dangerous. If check here, well, we can just take that with check. So yeah, I just thought if you thought about distracting e5, but no, it's not possible. So this isn't that great. So in fact, but Max Euwe saw this, that isn't that great, and played a different move now, which is, it seems, the strongest move in the position. It's to threaten this mate in 2 with queen g4 and queen h2. Okay, so that forces white's response to address that. Very serious threat. White responds with knight h2, covering against that mating combination. But now this is taken, king takes, and now the rook does use h4. All these things are possible because that knight is not on f3. The rook comes to h4, and now another threat, bishop g2, threatening a mate in 1 with rook takes e4, because that would be checkmate, because the queen's covering all these escape squares. So rook takes e4 mate is the threat. Now that's addressed with knight f3. It seemed maybe better is f3, but that's another story. We see in the game knight f3, and we start to see the real fury of black's play here. Fury is and relentlessness. So black's play here, I wonder if you can guess this move coming here now. So is this the end of the attack? Remember, these pieces are on the back row and this rook doesn't seem ready and available at the moment. So how do we carry on the attack here, would you say? Now, give yourself 100 points for this. This isn't a bad move, actually, and it's still a big advantage for black. That isn't a bad move. It's a good position, this, that black's in. Yeah, there's more than one move that can lead to Rome, so to speak. But the most incisive move is played, which is this rook sack. Give yourself 200 points for that one. This brings the king into mortal danger, nearly. The king has to take. It's very forced, and now this knight springs out of the first rank into action. Check. And now there's a king chase on. We've got a king chase. Queen f5 check. And where can the king go? If the king goes to d2, that's end of game. Immediately, it's apparent. Knight takes c4 would fork the king and the queen. So the king has to step forward. If it goes to e3, again, knight takes c4 check, and actually even worse than taking the queen, we just mate after with queen d5 checkmate. So the king has to step to d4, and perhaps best would have been actually to casually just take this, which is a sort of quiet-ish move in that it's not check, but it is sort of weaving this mating net, and queen f4 next is pretty deadly. That would have been quite crushing as well, but this is dangerous as well, just keeping the pressure with the checks relentlessly. King d3, queen takes c4 check now is played. This is also good to take on f3, but queen takes c4, bishop takes f3. Now there's a threat of bishop e4, for example, which is used b3, bishop e4 check, queen d3, with the threats now of knight c4 check. If this is not addressed, this is a forced mate. I'll give you an example, token move, just to show. Knight c4 check, queen c2, And here, rook takes a4, checkmate. So that needs to be addressed with high priority. Knight c4 is the mate in the free threat. We have white playing this check. King f7, rook ac1, which guards the c3 pawn. So this extinguishes a bit this idea. We have queen d2 check now. King a3. But now, knight c4 check anyway. Yeah, because I wonder if you can see the neat idea in this position. Black to play. Okay, there's a crushing forcing move. Give yourself 200 points if you see this one. Maybe I'll give you a bit more time. There's been one offer, which is there. Any others if you want to mention before I show it? Albert S on Play Chess, yes. Thank you. Okay, bang. Forcing move, rook takes a4. Now, if king b3, then that's mate. So really this needs to be taken. Now we have queen a2 check, and here king here. Now queen b2 check, and white resigned here. He's losing his queen or being mated, or it seems. Well, in fact, probably just, well, losing his queen first. Now, there's no immediate mate except, okay, well, white resigned. If king a5, then there is an immediate mate, embarrassingly, with queen a5 checkmate. So let's assume white wants to keep playing here. King c5. The best is actually, queen takes f2 to win the queen. And then we can take the queen and whip material up, and we can still threaten mates. This is good to win further material, threatening mate here. So if takes, we just take here, absolutely winning. So that's absolutely winning. And if instead of king c5 we have king a4, then we just take here, and black's absolutely winning. Yeah, it's too much, the queen and bishop. So to me, this game was really, it has a relentless feel about it. I think you might agree, from that whole losing the pawn on b6 business. It seems the queen was a king safety aspect in a way, because black, after playing knight f4, was able to drive the white king from pillar to post. It was a really phenomenal king chase on the chessboard. You know, so yeah, that was quite an aggressive game. Okay, let's look at another really aggressive game now, but from two lesser known players. So they managed to make it into the best of the best, and that's very special when that happens. It must mean an even more special game than usual, unless also sometimes the games are made up, fabricated, but I think this was a real game. So this game between two relatively unknown players, well, to me anyway, is Molinari playing white against Luis Raul Cabral. Now Molinari, I'll just check if they've got any bios. This is the only game he's got in the entire chess games database. Cabral playing black. Let me see, just quickly check. Cabral playing black might have more than one game if it loaded, which is not great. Okay, well, when that news comes back, I'll tell you when that ever loads. So let's have a look at this game. d4, knight f6, knight f3, d5. c4, c6, Slav, typical Slav. Knight c3, knight bd7, e3, e6. So this is quite an interesting decision, trade-offs for white, closing in this bishop, but firmly holding that pawn. Pretty standard stuff, actually. So this is very beaten path, this sequence. Very beaten path. White often plays e4 here, though. A large number of games with e4. He didn't. He just castled c5, b3. Now this is a little bit odd as well to play b3. Usually a4 is played. But anyway, after bishop b7, queen e2, queen b6, rook d1, bishop e7, a4 now, b4 knight b1. And it looks as though, hold on a sec, is black underestimating the light squares here? Can't the knight just come back on c4? Rook c8, knight d2, as though the knight's coming back on c4 with a vengeance, right? With tempo. C takes d4, knight c4, the queen drops back. White avoids any isolated queen's pawn and actually keeps the position of the pawns symmetrical. If you look, they're all symmetrical on both sides of the board. Black castles, bishop d2, a5, that pawn was attacked, so it's defended. Knight b5 attacking the queen, that's moved. Knight bd6, yes, this is all running with tempo, isn't it? And maybe the expectation was for black to move the rook. Would you move the rook? Maybe that's the expectation of this move. So white getting his own way, it seems, for quite a few moves. Or is that really the case? After this queen a8, knight b6, knight d6. Black to play. Do you want to be pushed around more? Or is there anything else you want to do here? If you're playing black, what do you want to do here? The players are fairly unknown. Molinari against Louis Cabral. No, actually I've just news. It's finally loaded. Louis Cabral was born in 1913. And appears to be 103 years old. I don't know. You see, it appears that Uruguayan champion in 1948 and 1970, and he appears to be 103 years old. He's still around. Now, according to Wiki, by the way, maybe I should have mentioned, this is the Uruguayan Immortal game. In the Uruguayan Championship in 1943, Ru Cabral defeated Molinari with a brilliant... Okay, I don't want to release the tension of the story. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was so brilliant. What you're about to see is so brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Okay. Tension, sorry. Anyway, his final remark about this game, a game destined for immortality. I'm just shocked if he's still alive. This guy's still alive. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's a bit of a shock. So he is a champion in his own right. So quite a gulf between his winning the Uruguayan Championship in 1948 and 1970 as well. Okay, it's interesting. So what did he do? What did he do? This is a very talented player, clearly, and he's on a good diet as well to live so long. So There's two good moves. Give yourself 100 points for either of them. Not rook c7. This gives white an advantage, and you've been pushed around on the chessboard. You're willing to give up your nice light squared bishop when you had an opportunity to damage white's king? No, you don't want to do that. The sacrificing of the exchange is good. Or rook takes c4 with the same idea, to sacrifice the exchange to damage white's king. Because if knight takes b7, the knight's stranded there, right? The rook retreats and this knight's stranded. It's going to have to give itself up, up on material. So either idea, give yourself 100 points. Either taking or taking there. If taking here, we have the same idea, we're going to just damage white's king. You know, when we do this, we're damaging the pawn structure around the king. These guys are more isolated than they were. This is the game continuation. Knight takes c8, rook takes c8. And the bishop's also helping control against e4, of course. It also means that, you know, bishop f3 is on the cards as well. So this threatened skewer is parried with rook e1. Bishop f3 anyway. Queen f1. Queen d5, threatening a mate in 2 of queen g5 check. Queen will have to interpose. So white stops that with e4, covering that g5 square. And as I say, like the previous game, this is also intensely relentless attacking game. It's a kind of coincidence as well to me that these two games are featured together for this decade. It's absolutely, completely relentless, the moves of this game. There's at least two very, very strong attacking moves. A third one is also strong. I wonder if you can guess any of the top 3 moves which are recommended. Top 3 moves, just pick one. Okay, I'll give you 200 points, 150 points, or 100 points, depending on what you say. Well, I'm going to tell you the points after. What do you reckon is the strongest move in this position? It was the one actually that was played. Right, there's 3 really good moves. This one's really good. That wasn't played though. It is really good. It's really dangerous. It threatens queen g4 again. And if bishop f4, yeah, this is good for black. Knight c5. If that moves, for example, then we can take here. It's just very nice, you know, very nice for black. But also, what was played is really strong as well, which is you might be surprised with. Rook takes c4 is really strong. Another very good move is knight takes e4. But okay, the top 2, like, yeah, this is one of the top ones. Rook takes c4. So one point here is if it takes, we have rook g4 check, forcing white to give back the queen. After rook takes, here is not possible because of rook g3 checkmate. So say king f1, rook takes h2, threatening checkmate. And this is very tricky. It's actually mate next move or 2. There's only one delaying move, and then white's going to get mated after. So white gets mated with rook h1 next. So that's the idea, that you can't really take this queen. Very bad things happen. So white took on c4. Now he took with the pawn. And we have queen h5 threatening. Sorry, you took with the pawn. We have queen h5 threatening queen g4 check. So that's parried with bishop f4. But now knight g4 actually. Okay, the bishop's protecting that. But it's still really dangerous. There's more pressure on these escape squares, basically building up. You might think, well, what can be done with that pressure? Bishop e2 is played. That is supported with the knight coming in now. So we've got quite a large number of attacking pieces like vultures coming in for white's king here. Now clearly white shouldn't take this because of check, and actually the bishop can be dislodged with g5, because if bishop g3, then we can actually take this off and threaten g4 and queen h3. It's very, very nasty. For example here, g4, and it's just really nasty. This, if takes, that's mate, it's just very nasty. So basically this is really quite dangerous, this supporting knight move. That cannot really be taken. So we have h3 instead. But now another relentless move in this position, bishop c5, threatening knight takes f2 among other things. Of course, that is a soft spot. White tries to defend. But it gets absolutely brutal, and you can see why this guy's like a massive champion now. This gets absolutely brutal from this point on. Black's play here. Can you guess? I'm just trying to visualize what he must have visualized for this, and it's, I've got to say, it's really impressive. It's really, really impressive calculation from Cabral. Maybe he's played other brilliant games. Should really check him out after this. Well, I mean, if you want to check out an attacking player that no one's ever heard of, this guy could be a good candidate to check out, because he played what seems to be the top most clinical move, knight takes f2. Now the threat is a mate in 2 with knight takes h3. I'll just show you it on the board actually, just to show clearly what the threat is. Right, it's say we do this token move, knight takes h3 is double check, king h2, knight g4 is checkmate. Yeah, we've covered all the escape squares, it's checkmate. So that's the threat really. So that is taken. But what we've done is cleared this diagonal a bit. But now it's actually a forced mate in 6. This is a mate in 6. So if you want a hard puzzle challenge, this is mate in 6. How good are you at mate in 6s? He actually played the mate in 6. As a mate in 6. It's incredible. It starts with this check. Not too many move choices. King h2. Then this check. Not too many move choices. Now if king g1, that's even quicker, because we have queen g3 exploiting the pin. Then we just mate with that. Yeah. So we have bishop g3 being played, but here is oh, it's delightful. There is a delightful concept here which I haven't really vocalized before, because we consider our mating nets by controlling the escape squares, right? But sometimes you can trade perhaps the control of an escape square with occupation of an escape square with one of the opponent's pieces. This trade of control versus occupation could be very, very handy. Very, very handy. Because you might also do a little configuration change. Oh, this is a wonderful, wonderful thing, that there's such a tempting move candidate, which is completely wrong. It can be completely wrong if you've got the wrong continuation. It looks as though you're controlling the escape square, right? It does look as though you don't want to lose that control of the escape square, right? Correct? But there are two moves which are mate in 4 on the first move. There are two moves which are both mate in 4. Okay, so black to play. Can you identify the two moves which are both mate in 4? And if you can identify both, then you're on the right track for the right continuation. If you can't identify both, then you've missed a little nuance in the position. You're on the wrong track with what you think is a mate in 4. If you can identify both mate in 4s, you're on the right track. Both mate in 4s are bishop g1 or knight g4. But in both cases, you need to use this bishop g1 idea. So let's have a look at the bishop g1 idea. What does it do? It means the queen hasn't got queen h3 as a defensive resource. So my point is here that if you said knight g4 with the idea of the check here, then actually this is very, very good for white because of queen h3, and white's winning. White's winning. You see? So the point here that this game emphatically mates in this position is that sometimes you need to trade your control of an escape square with an occupation, because there's another configuration change that the queen h3 is removed as a defensive resource. That's the point. If you want to play this, you must continue here with bishop g1 to put the queen on g1, because if the king takes, then we have queen g3 with a mate in 2. Right? So we put the queen on g1. This is the key point. We put the queen on g1, and we still have the mating pattern with the queen h6 check without any queen h3, and then we have the mate. So there's the two mate in 4s, and this guy played one of them with bishop g1 first, which is quite impressive. So just to recap here, bishop g1. So if king takes, we just play queen takes g3, and then we're mating. And if queen takes, that escape square has been removed by the queen, and the queen has no queen h3, and we play now knight g4. And this is a forced mate in 2, you know, it takes queen h6, forcing this, and it's checkmate. So that's pretty cool, isn't it? So that's the Uruguayan immortal. Yeah, that was the Uruguayan immortal game played in 1943. Montevideo? Montevideo, is that a place name? Montevideo? Did they have videos back then? I'm going to check. Does that place exist? It does, Montevideo. So this is before YouTube videos. There's a place called Montevideo. Spanish pronunciation. Anyway, so that's the capital and largest city of Uruguay. So that's where this game was played by the Uruguayan champion Euwe Cabral. Okay, so he's got some other games which are in the database at chess games.com, 16 games. So an interesting player. This is one of his finest games. it seems. He's actually had some other quick wins, which maybe another time. So I hope you enjoyed the games tonight. I don't know, in the 1940s it seems that these are more relentlessly aggressive, these two first games from the best of 1940, than in the previous decade. So really serious attacking stuff. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a good week. See you next week. And remember to like the video if you got anything from it, so that's great. And think about those escape squares. You know, as long as we can get one of the opponent's pieces on an escape square, that's sometimes better, as this game shows. And the other game also showed a relentless attack. If we can get the queen away from the opponent's king, we can start attacking maybe with more power as well. So things to think about for the attacking player, I believe, in both games. So hope there's some takeaways there, and see you next week. Thanks so much.